It is April 9th, 2018. We're starting off at 2 in the afternoon to record this with the attack playing tonight. Before we get going, I'm going to ask us all to stand for a moment of silence and as we think about the kids in the hockey bus, the Broncos in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, if you'll join me. Thank you. It's the reason why we've all got the green ribbons on our chest today, thinking about that. Councillor O'Leary, you've ridden a bus. You can give us a little better perspective, I think, than...
Well, I've been riding the bus for almost my whole life, I think. Boy, I could come up with a million stories, but, you know, listening to this, I think back of, it reminds me of dropping my wife and kids off on a bus at the old Coliseum in a snowstorm. Highway 6 and 10 and Highway 21 was all closed. The kids were heading to Windsor, and everyone was excited when Highway 6 and 10 opened up because they got to go. No one ever thought that, you know, there was going to be a problem with, you know, being in an accident or anything. No one ever thought about things like that. And it's just, it's heartbreaking. And I watched that vigil last night, and it was, you know, if you didn't tear up, you're just not human. And it was hard to watch. And I know for me, my son coaches in Moose Jaw, and their travel schedule is twice what the attack go through. And you just don't expect anything to happen. It just goes on, and until this happens. But that was touching last night, and at the end, they had a prayer, and everyone in the building was holding hands, including Don Cherry and Ron McLean, and it was tough to watch. So, thoughts and prayers to Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Thank you.
It's difficult to throw some rivalry at the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie after that. It just changes your perspective that everybody's hockey towns, hockey families, hockey mayors are all in this and feel this. So thank you. Yeah.
Can we send a letter of condolence to that municipality from our municipality?
I don't know why not. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. So council started off at 1:15 in a closed session. Council reviewed the minutes of the closed session meeting held on March 19th, 2018, the minutes of the Community Services closed session meeting held on March 21st, 2018, the minutes of the Housing Company closed session meeting held on February 16th, 2018, and discussed one further matter respecting the disposition of land. Council provided further direction to staff respecting the matters. That's what we've done so far. Call for additional business. Staff, any additional? Seeing none from staff. Council, Marion?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one item regarding Community Foundation, Grey Bruce.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Travis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to just give an update on the Young Professionals event that happened last month.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Good. Thank you. So disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Anyone? Travis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to declare pecuniary interest on item 21H due to employment.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll declare pecuniary interest item 12B, CR 18053. The fire chief's report is I am employed as a firefighter.
Thanks. Remind you, new rules, you don't have to stand.
Just tradition, Your Worship.
Practice, habit. Confirmation of council minutes. Councillor Gregg.
Moved by myself, Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Leary, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 19th, 2018, as printed, be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. 6B.
Moved by myself, Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that the minutes from the council closed session meeting held on March 19th, 2018, as printed, be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. Number 7.
Moved by myself, Counselor Gregg, seconded by Counselor O'Leary, that City Council now move into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
All in favor? That is carried, so we're now in Committee of the Whole. That, you want to hand me that? Is it those ones you're done? Yep. Okay. There are no public meetings. At number 9, we have deputations and presentations. First of all, we welcome Sandra Barker, resident with regard to fluoride in pregnancy. Welcome.
Your Worship, members of City Council, since my husband's health problems were diagnosed about 2 years ago as being multiple system atrophy caused by fluoride toxicity, I've been searching the effect on public health by the addition of fluorosilicic acid to our drinking water. Then I read an article in the Sun-Times about the council's desire to attract more millennials to Owen Sound. And I thought this was a very worthwhile project. However, while canvassing for signatures to ask that the question about fluoridation be placed on the next municipal ballot, I met quite a few young couples who said that they were not intending to stay in Owen Sound because they didn't want to raise their children in a fluoridated area. I sent the mayor a notice about some of these people that I had met. I therefore wish today to present to each member of the council a small book called Pregnancy and Fluoride Do Not Mix. It's a very well-written book by a well-known doctor, researcher, and I would ask that each of you commit yourselves to spending 1 hour looking at the first report in it. If at the end of the hour you can decide how you feel, and I'm sure that you'll want to continue to read the other 2 reports in it. It's a subject that's very important to young adults in their reproductive years, and I'm sure that will be very important to any millennials deciding to come here to live. Pregnant women are just one small group of a subgroup of people in the community who are very sensitive to fluoride because they drink far more water than the average person. So at this time, I'd like, have you given the books out, Brianna? Good. I'd like to recommend that you do have an open mind, take time, look at the first, there's 3 reports in the book. Read the first one right through, and I think you will be very impressed with the research that is available on the subject of fluoridation in drinking water. So thank you very much for letting me come. Thank you for taking the book, and I bless you for what you're trying to do.
Thank you. I think just to reiterate from Ms. Barker, I did meet with her a couple of years ago, and I think I exchanged emails with a daughter who lived in Guelph.
Yes, actually, in the book, there's a letter from my daughter as well.
Okay.
She had to do the ordering of the books because she ordered them on computer, and I'm hopeless on
to
computers.
explain what I had explained to your daughter, that under the Fluoridation Act, if a municipality chooses to add fluoridation, they can choose to remove it.
That's right.
Where it is started under the Act by a vote, which was, I think, 1964, there was a vote to put it on. There has been 2 subsequent votes to remove it, and each time the electors elected to keep it. And as long as the electors have elected to keep it, then council has no role in removing or changing that. Just to clarify, and I sort of set out, I was hoping that I had it set out in my computer that I could pull up, but I had explained to your daughter the specific parts of the Act that she could go and look at it, so she'd understand that there's
Yeah.
2 streams, and so at this point, it is either a ballot and a question on the ballot that the city decides, all of the voters get to decide, and that's really the only route at this point.
And I think that's an excellent way of doing it. And it's given us a chance to talk to a lot of people, because one of the biggest problem is the journalists and all will not touch it. It is such a political question.
Yes.
And although we have tried and tried to get some information out so that voters are more informed, we get no cooperation from the public journalists.
Going a little bit further here, but as I recall with this election, it will be even a little bit harder just to be involved, correct? You have to be more organized, and you'll know that already, but to be an active lobbyer or advertiser in the elections, you'll have to be registered and do more things than the last election. So anyway, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, Mayor Bai. I just wanted to congratulate you and say thanks for you taking the time to speak here today, and to acknowledge the hard work that you're doing in the committee or in the community, gathering the signatures and working on the petition. I just wanted to ensure you knew that I think it's a very worthwhile effort that you've undertaken over a few years. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next on the deputation list is I get to present recognition to Mr. Hibma, who is, I see is present. So I'm going to head down to the other microphone there. So I've got some notes here. One of the most satisfying things I get to do as mayor is to recognize individuals on behalf of council and the city for their outstanding work and volunteerism. Today, we have the honor of recognizing Mr. Dick Hibma. Dick, if you want to come on up. We'd like to welcome and acknowledge Mr. Hibma and his wife and his family and friends who have put up with him for all these years, never being at home, running around. Well, I've already asked him to come up. Throughout his life, Dick has been no stranger to public service here in Owen Sound and throughout Grey and Bruce. It probably started as president at West Hill Secondary School in about 1972, which we all know was the far superior school. Dick served as a city councillor for 3 terms, a total of 9 years, from 1994 to 2003. And during that time, he served as the city's representative on the board of directors for the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, being the councillor elected. After 2013, he continued to be our representative, or one of our 2 representatives on the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. He has focused his efforts on conservation and continued to serve on our behalf the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority for 23 years until his recently announced retirement, spending all but one of those years since 1998 as the board chair. 1998 was a busy year for Dick. He also joined the Conservation Ontario Board, which he served as the provincial chair since 2006, so 12 years. I don't think any of us can truly appreciate the hours, work, dedication that Dick has put in on behalf of Owen Sound in the area to help ensure a healthy watershed, the sustainable management of our renewable resources, the environmental awareness, conservation, restoration, and responsible management of our water, land, and natural resources. So I'm pleased on behalf of Council and behalf of the city to present you with a token of our sincere appreciation for your work and dedication to conservation in the area and all the work that you've done on behalf of Owen Sound. Thank you so much. And you get the microphone. Oh, Sandy wants to put this here too. Got it? Oh, there's more? Oh, okay. Go ahead. That too.
Okay, thank you. Being a conservationist, I'm saving paper. How on earth did I get here? Some of you who have known me for a longer time will realize that I'm the third of 8 children born to Dutch immigrants, raised in Leith, which was a wonderful place to enjoy childhood and grow to high school age. And for the last 40-some years, I've been a resident of the city of Owen Sound. But while I grew up in Leith, I developed a very, very strong love of the outdoors. Leith being surrounded by forests, streams, the bay, ponds, and rivers. It was just a wonderful place to develop that appreciation. As Mayor Boddy indicated, West Hill, I want to single out a particular person, Steve Herr, who passed away this past winter. He was my accounting teacher in high school, and he happened to be the staff representative for Student Council at West Hill. And as the Student Council President elections were upcoming, he took the opportunity in this class of about 20 to 24 students to opine, shall we say, about the type of people who typically get elected as Student Council presidents. And experience had shown that it was usually a starting quarterback or the starting center of the football or basketball team. And Mr. Herr thought that perhaps it was time for maybe a little something different, and he just pointed his finger and said, maybe like Hibma down there. And at that time, I was probably just a smidge over 5 feet tall and probably cruised in at about 85 pounds, and I caught like a deer in the headlights. What? And to their credit, the rest of the class thought that might be a good idea. And I end up as Student Council President. And here I am now. What the takeaway of that is, for those of you who've been in the teaching profession or consider that, or anybody viewing this, every day that you go to work as a teacher, you have an incredible opportunity to transform one child's life or one young person's life by perhaps pointing out or suggesting that they have potential to do something, to be something more than what they've ever envisioned. And I really want to acknowledge that contribution by Steve Herr. And I'm sure he touched a number of people in his teaching career, and as many of you have as well. So that's a key takeaway for me. It's just how influential you can be when you're in a position meeting and dealing with people day in and day out. That first election to City Council in 1994 was a tight one. Councillor Lemon will recall. It actually took late into the night and the possibility of a recount. But at the end of the process, I was in, and Councillor Lemon rejoined council shortly thereafter with the resignation of one who had just been elected. So we worked together for the 3 terms that I was on council. And that was a tremendous opportunity. And I know you folks have all heard this about being on council is a thankless job. And I'm going to contradict that statement by saying I found that over the time that I was involved, I had any number of people, more often than not, were stopping me and thanking me for the effort I put in and the contribution I was making. So I know you may not have that same experience, but I would hold that up to you that I personally congratulate you for putting the effort in. I know the hours that it takes, and I know some of the abuse that you can take, but it is worthwhile, and you do have a tremendous opportunity to shape lives, shape community, and learn from one another and all of the people you meet. So I congratulate you for your service as well. January '98, when I got elected as the chair of Grey Sauble, I followed in the footsteps of Bob Rutherford, who was the most recent representative of the City of Owen Sound to have been in that position at Conservation Authority. And 2 years later, the Walkerton water crisis took place. And that particular event was transformational for conservation authorities because it led to the O'Connor inquiry, it led to the recommendations that came from that, and it led to ultimately drinking water source protection planning effort and the ensuing plans, which although they took many, many years to come about, are very worthwhile. And as councillors, you have a very key responsibility in the oversight of municipal drinking water. There's a tendency to read through the reports and say, yep, sounds good. But this particular instance with municipal drinking water supply, I just want to highlight that one for you because that particular responsibility, as they found out in Walkerton, holds lives in the balance. I was working at the Bruce with people from Walkerton, and there are still people there who are experiencing health issues because their health was compromised. And that's not to diminish the 7 deaths that took place at the time. So your responsibility in terms of receiving and understanding those reports and providing oversight of your water treatment facility, that's a key one, folks. Due diligence is essential every year. Don't take a break on that one, please. Those lessons that we learn the hard way can grow dim in memory, and people forget the price that was paid for that thing that we take for granted, and that's safe drinking water. Shortly after that, I was approached by the CAO of Conservation Ontario at the time, and he was looking around at the members of that council and thinking, the fellow who had been in the chair's position for those years with at the Grand River and had been thrust into the chair's position just when this Walkerton water business took place, he was looking for an opportunity to step down. And Dick Hunter met me for supper one night and just planted a seed that I might consider a leadership position in Conservation Ontario. And in 2006, that opportunity presented itself, and what an amazing journey that has been. I've had tremendous opportunities to learn from world-renowned scientists. Dr. Jim Bruce, who was working for Environment Canada at the time, he was one of those who set the initial agenda for the first meeting of the International Panel on Climate Change. And I worked under his direction on the Public Interest Advisory Group that was part of the Upper Great Lakes study for the IJC. And Mr. Bruce, at that time, was invited to Oslo, Norway, to be a co-recipient of the Nobel Prize with Al Gore, whose name I'm sure you all recognize. So, and I spent a fair bit of time with him over the years, just sitting down for dinner when we were off traveling in our various meetings in different communities. So, wonderful opportunity to learn from tremendous people. And these are things that I treasure, that kind of involvement. Because of that involvement, I have to extend my appreciation to you as council and previous councils who have received my request to represent you at Grace Auble Conservation Authority election after election, year after year, and extending to me that opportunity of representing you. I recognize that you're going beyond what your bylaws state by unanimous votes of council. I'm well beyond the sunset clause in the bylaw for public appointments on your behalf, and I do deeply appreciate that. Those who advocated for me and those who have supported me, that has been tremendous. I really can't say enough how much I appreciate that. I have, in our January Conservation Authority meeting, and I recognize our CAO, Secretary Treasurer Sonia Skinner, has come just to witness this event. At our January meeting, I stepped back from the chair's position. The intent was to enable someone else to take on the leadership, and I would be available as a resource because your gracious appointment of me ends at January 31st, 2019. And we'll see how many of you are back again following the municipal election. We'll see how that turns out. But that will bring to an end my service on behalf of the City of Owen Sound. Next Monday, I will be in Toronto for the Conservation Ontario AGM, where I will do the same thing, stepping down as chair, and the election of somebody new will take place. And then the next day, the conservation authorities will be holding a Queen's Park Day, and at that point, we'll be signing a memorandum of cooperation between the provincial government, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and Conservation Ontario, in how we will work together in partnership with the passage of the renewed Conservation Authorities Act back in December, and all of the work that will go into the regulations and policies, procedures that flow out of that effort. So I feel that I'm going out at a good time. We have tremendous staff both here locally, under Sonia's leadership, and in Newmarket at the Conservation Ontario office. We are just working through this year to finalize a new strategic plan for Grace Auble, well-positioned at both levels for me to step away and consider that after this many years, I checked the bag around the throat, and there's a best before date. It's coming up, so it's time to go. It's been a real pleasure, and I thank you all for the opportunity to serve the City of Owen Sound and its residents, and you as council. Thank you.
I'm just heading back to my chair. Anyone else? Jim? Go ahead. Might be a couple. So.
Sure, thank you. There might be others who want to speak as well, but if I just, Dick, I just want to thank you for your service. If anybody had any doubt of why this council, previous councils have appointed Dick for many, many years, I think he just showed you why right there. We've been blessed with, after your time on council, you continue to stay involved. We've been blessed with some great volunteers over the years. I was starting to write some down, and I thought that's really unfair because there's some great names there, but none are better than Dick Hibma. I want to thank, I'm going to go off script a little bit, I want to thank Sandra Lee and your family. As you mentioned, public life is sometimes challenging for those around this table. It's also challenging, perhaps more so, for the families involved. And Sandra, I can't even imagine how many dinners Dick's missed or been late for, said he's going to be right there, and 2 hours later there's no sign of him still, or phone calls or meetings, and we can go on and on and on. So I want to thank you and your family for all you've done to support this treasure for our community. Last thing I'll say, Dick, you said your best before date. I hope that's not true. As anyone can see, you're very youthful, both in age and in spirit, and I hope that after some time we'll see you involved again. Because, well, first of all, because you probably will go crazy sitting at home not being involved, but more importantly because your community needs you, needs people like you. So thank you for everything, and I'm sure, as I said, others have things to say as well.
We're going to go to Peter next.
Well, I have this sort of funny experience with Dick. I was on council actually before he was elected, and then got edged out, as he recalled and I recalled. Was that the night that the ballot box was taken home by somebody? Because that happened when you were on council. I don't know whether the first time you were elected or the next time, and that was
It might have been, yeah.
well, rather humorous because nobody knew who'd won the election or lost. But anyway, one of the things that I would like to comment on is that Dick got involved in the Conservation Authority when the province, I was going to say cut funding, it's actually slashed funding to conservation. It's never been restored to the previous levels. And it bothers me, as it bothers Dick, I know, that there's huge areas in this area which are protected, thank heavens. And conservation is near and dear to Dick, as it is to many of us in this room. And I appreciate his service to our community, and not just our community, but all of the watershed of Grey Bruce, the Conservation Authority, but also the other conservation authorities, because I know the word spread, and the good management of the forest lands. Terrifically important, and something that most people don't appreciate. I'd love to know the number of trees that were planted during Dick's tenure in office. But I think 1 million would probably be a conservative estimate. I think it's a little more than that.
There was a period of time about 10 years ago where we were planting upwards of 300,000 per year.
Yes.
So I think we're probably closer to 3 or 4 million by this point in time after those 23 years of service.
And I think that as the trees have grown, so has Dick in the service that he's given to us and future generations. And the thing about conservation, we have a planning department, very important, but we also have a conservation authority. Planning has a limited lifespan. Conservation has lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, because those trees are carbon dioxide removers. They enhance the environment. They keep the water flowing in the streams and rivers and the whole ecosystem. And I'd like to thank you, Dick, for your years of service. I enjoyed being a counselor with you. I enjoyed being on the conservation with you, because you thought it out. You listened and you thought it out. And that's the big thing about conservation. To be honest with you, I think conservation has a lot to do with a thing called common sense. And you exhibited both on council and in the Conservation Authority, the common sense for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Marion?
Thank you, Worship. Dick, it's truly been a pleasure of mine to have served with you. When you were a councillor, I was a municipal employee. I certainly remember that long, late election night, and the ballot box going missing, etc. But you've always been respected as a councillor, and I certainly looked up to you as a municipal employee then. It's been a pleasure also working with you on the Conservation Authority. Certainly opened my eyes, and you're certainly respected in that area as well. And having a little experience with Conservation Ontario, you're a good name that's always been there as well. So I know we're in good hands now with Sonia, and you feel that way yourself. But thank you for all your service, Dick, and it's been wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Brian?
Dick, congratulations on a great run with the conservation. I just wanted to, you probably already know, but this is an election year. and you're more than welcome. We have a great team here, and who knows, maybe you could edge out Peter Lemon again. No, I'm just kidding, Peter. Just kidding, just kidding. We have a great council, but you would make us better, and you should consider it down the road sometime. Thanks very much.
Councillor O'Leary, I've had that invitation extended a number of times over the years, and I just tell people that I'm a recovering politician.
Thanks, Brian. Arlene?
Thanks. Dick, thanks. I just have one question. Are you going to the game tonight?
Where else would I be?
I know that. I always see you there anyway. Thanks.
So, Dick, if I can wrap up with two things. One that I thought Jim was going to say, and he didn't. I started in 2010, and you don't know how often in those first 4 years I heard from him, this is what Dick would do, or Dick told me to, or if there was a constant, you had so much effect on him that has had such an effect on all of us about how to get things done, and if you can't get 100%, get what you can, and then worry about getting the other 20% next year. And it's, I know Jim lives by that, and it came from you, and he always cites you on that. The other story that I'll tell, and I forgot until you mentioned it tonight, my mom lived next door to Dick and Sandra. And we were waiting, watching Rogers Cable for the results to come in that election, and they weren't coming, and it was getting late. I don't know how late. It was after midnight.
It's 1 or 2 o'clock, Marion?
Oh, I shouldn't have asked. So I came home, and there's a glass breezeway at the back. My mom's parked in the laneway, go in. And from the glass breezeway, you can see into Dick's basement where their TV room is. And all these people are jumping up and down. And I'm calling my mother, who is in the living room still waiting, and we're both standing there in the breezeway watching everybody in your TV room jumping up and down with excitement that you had won. So I still remember that very clearly. It's a great memory to have. So on behalf of all of us, the city, and everybody, gee, we didn't even mention that you ran for the Green Party, carrying that banner that much further. So thank you for everything that you've done for us, for the city in all your years, and it was always a good decision to waive that sunshine clause or sunset clause, whatever, and keep you there. So thank you very much.
Thanks. And if I may, just one last thing. Thank you to Councillor McManaman for his highlighting my wife Sandra Lee being here with me today. That's a bit of a challenge, but she has endured a great deal, putting up with me and my passion. And for those of you who are looking for something, follow your passion. It's a worthwhile endeavor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to both of you. Thank you. So next on the list is public question period. If anyone has a question to ask, yep, please. Yep. Okay, you step up to the microphone, state your name.
Well, first of all, I couldn't have asked for a better segue than what I'm about to talk about. You may have, Mr. Hibman, you may have worked with my brother Joe Watson at the Ministry of Natural Resources. Great. Okay, here we are talking about conservation. My name is Patrick Watson, and I'm as nervous as you know what, so please bear with me. I'm here to speak today to you about your decision to pave the nature trail that runs from the entrance of Harrison Park to the Rainbow Bridge. When I read my mother, who I've moved back to Owen Sound to take care of, the news that City Council had voted to fix a road to the park, she said, well, it's about time. Then I told her that Council had voted to pave over the nature trail. Then she said, that's the stupidest thing I have ever heard. I have been walking that path since I was a little girl. It is one of the last places in Owen Sound that is still a natural path where you can enjoy the beauty of the trees, animals, and the rivers. Over the last few weeks, I have been riding down to the park on my bike and talking with people on the trails on both sides of the river. Most are shocked that Council has decided to pave the natural dirt path over. I understand the reasoning behind paving it over for accessibility access, but I believe there's more to consider before making this decision. Since the park opened 160 years ago, my great-great-grandparents, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and my siblings have all walked that path to the park from downtown Owen Sound. We are slowly losing our heritage and connections with our past, but if it is paved over, the whole environment of the area will be changed. Since it is a natural path through the woods, it is not a perfect trail. There is a hill, there is a curve. In the spring, the ice on the incline on the west side of the trail melts, and the water crosses the dirt trail, and it works its way down the grass area to the Sydenham River. An asphalt trail is not a natural environment. It creates heat, which will change the normal environment of the wildlife that live in this area. If the path is paved, these are some of the problems that will occur. The melting ice will create frozen ice on the paved trail, mainly on the incline and decline on the hill. When people are out for their daily walks, which my mother and my grandmother did, as they have done for years, they can step on black ice, fall, break bones, sue the city. With the trail in its natural state, the ground absorbs water, which in turn the surrounding plants live on. A paved trail will divert the natural flow of water, as has been happening since before anyone set foot in this area. If the path is paved over, city maintenance would have to be out there every morning on when the sun rose, salting the path to prevent accidents. And this leads to the biggest problem, salt and other chemicals. The salt or chemicals will wash down the trail, down the incline to the Sydenham River. This will induce a deadly substance to the wildlife, birds, snakes, frogs, insects, fish, just to name a few. How long before there will be a dead zone in this area of the Sydenham River due to the high levels of salt and other chemicals being deposited in there? Dogs and their owners have been walking the natural trail and will now have to avoid it because salt and dogs' paws do not mix. In the winter, people cross country on the ski trail. Asphalt will put a stop to that. There is an environment issue that you have to think of. As a cyclist, I enjoy riding the dirt trail, but because of the fact that it's tricky in spots, I ride through the trail carefully. I am also aware that children, elderly, parents, and strollers and dogs on that trail. If you pave it, it can become a raceway for cyclists, skateboarders, and many other motorized vehicles.
Pat, this is a question period, so I'll get you to aim for your question there and start to wrap up a bit. Thanks.
So I can't discuss this? I'm sorry, first time ever, so
It's a question period. You've been a
Will
couple
you
of minutes.
please think, well, it's almost at the end, but will you please
Okay,
think
go
about-
ahead and finish if you're close to the end.
Well, I think I pretty well got my point too. There is a plaque on that trail about the green belt. The city of Owen Sound is, I just hope that you would consider, you're voting today, I believe, on this, or you have voted on it? I just found out about it, that it may be finalized at this council from the last meeting.
It would be in the bylaws, yes.
So I hope you might consider, even if you have to put an environmental, something to look at, what will happen if you put an asphalt trail through a natural trail, and one of the last ones left in Owen Sound. Okay,
Good, thank you.
thank you.
Councilor McManaman?
And thank you for coming forward. I appreciate you were...
Yes, oh, sorry.
No.
Hey, I'll take all questions and answers.
No, I just wanted to try, I think you deserved some comments back. I
Yes,
appreciate you.
I'm ready.
We appreciate you coming here. That's what this is all about. So appreciate you're nervous, but you did a good job, so you don't need to be nervous. Some of the comments you've raised, you could be right. There are some valid concerns there. I think as this council discussed last meeting, it's like many of our decisions, it's a balancing act. What we heard from, and I would agree with you that Harrison Park is a jewel that, generations have enjoyed. What we heard from our accessibility committee was that generations of people who were able to get there could enjoy. There's many people who weren't able to enjoy it, like you and I are able to enjoy it. That's why this decision was made the way it was. There is, as you know, there's no sidewalk into Harrison Park along the roadway, as there would be in most other parks. So people in wheelchairs with mobility devices who had visual problems, they didn't have the enjoyment that you and I enjoyed because they couldn't get in there in the first place. That's what we were hearing from our accessibility committee. Especially in the spring, you talked about the spring, that path gets very...
Icy.
Well, washed out almost, and then it makes it even more inaccessible. So, again, some of the concerns you raised are valid and that we will need to stay on top of from a park staff perspective, for sure. But I think if we balance it, in all the trails in that park, there will be that one that's paved, allowing people to get to the center of the park and enjoy the rest of, the playground, the inn, the atmosphere, the city band playing in the summer, the rink, those types of things. It's a balancing act. So I'm not here to tell you that the things you've said are wrong or concerns you raised are wrong, but I do think that council, when we discussed this, we thought paving one trail out of the, I don't know how many are in there, but miles of trails that are in there, it wasn't, that was the trade-off. So thank you for your questions. Again, I don't think it's wrong, it's just...
That is the trail. That is the trail to Harrison Park, and it has been for 106 years. It's been, and like I just came back from Toronto, I work for the TTC. I watched the city become more accessible, the TTC become more accessible. But there are points where you have to say sometimes, maybe like, are they going to, you have to protect something, nature. I mean, I'm not against, because I'm here to take care of my mother who is disabled now. But even she said, sometimes now you can take buses in, you can take cars in, but sometimes you have to just leave nature for nature, because once it's gone, you don't get it back, no matter what. And this is a little part of the city that we can still preserve. And when you walk along there, you can still see the ducks, and you can see all this kind of stuff there, because it will change as soon as you put an asphalt trail through there.
Right, and I don't mean to debate you, and I won't. I just would point out that there's the back entrance that will remain, a nature trail. But anyway, thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Patrick. Patrick was a goalie on my lacrosse team and probably bantam, juvenile, midget, and I haven't seen him since we were 18.
I spent 2.5 hours on the floor with the North Stars last night, yesterday during their first practice. So.
His dad was a manager of the North Stars during the great years, so started them. So thank you for your question. Thanks. So we have no correspondence under 11 for which we need to consider. Down to number 12, 12A, report from the city manager with regard to Port of Owen Sound divestiture. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject of this report is Port of Owen Sound divestiture negotiations. The recommendation that City Council receive the report and acknowledges the formal conclusion of negotiations. The City has been in discussion with Transport Canada starting late in 2015 around the sale of the port and later the divestiture of the port. Numerous documents were provided by Transport Canada to the City and its consultants for review. Several meetings with City staff, City consultants, and Transport Canada staff were held to exchange information related to the Port of Owen Sound. We did our homework, Your Worship. Council provided myself with a negotiating position for a meeting with Transport Canada on February 6, 2018. Legal counsel Julie Abushar of Wilmsden Shire accompanied me, and representing Transport Canada was Vera Haslett, Regional Manager, and several of her staff. Just as the City Council had provided me with a mandate to negotiate a transfer of the port, Ms. Haslett had a mandate from Transport Canada. The meeting was cordial and a good discussion of the positions took place. It was apparent on several key points there would not be an agreement. Under the terms of the disclosure agreement between the parties, further comment is not appropriate at this time, Your Worship, but the deadline for reaching an agreement was March 31st, 2018. Both sides have agreed that the discussions are now closed.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Ritchie, that's one of the key points, is that there is a confidentiality agreement or an agreement, so we really can't say much more than what you've said.
Your Worship, I would state we certainly looked at all of the information. We had it analyzed. We had the best opinion from the consultants we had hired. And I guess there just was an agreement to be had, and that's really all we can say. But we did look at all the facts. We did our due diligence. If there had been something there that we thought we could have moved ahead on, both sides would have, but we're just too far apart at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
I find it interesting that, and I'm passing around the map from 1913 of the Owen Sound Harbor, that this problem has been existing since before Owen Sound was Owen Sound. The efforts to get some kind of an agreement with the federal government on conservation. And it's sad that the harbor has not come to the city after a century of trying.
Thank you. Need a motion? Councillor O'Leary?
I'd move that recommendation, Your Worship.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12B, Director of Corporate Services, Fire Report Consultant recommendation. Oh, sorry, Jim. Forgot to warn you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report asking that council approve awarding the RFP for fire services consulting to Dillon Consulting. Staff evaluated 8 proposals, and the highest score was Dillon Consulting, and we are recommending proceeding with this engagement. All stakeholders, including staff, community, the Fire Association, and council, will be encouraged to have input through this process as it moves forward.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
I would move this recommendation. I feel we need to move our fire department ahead, the safety of our residents ahead, and this is the best way of achieving it. After getting the information that we received, I feel that this company would be competent to do this and move the fire department ahead for the next number of years.
Thank you. Motion's on the table. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you very much. I just have one question. It just says our committee. Who was the committee, if I could ask?
Through Your Worship, it was the chief, the deputy chief, and myself.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. So 12C, Mr. Ritchie, report on the Pride Parade. Oops. Oh, why?
Thank you, Your Worship. Will I continue, Your Worship?
Well, after Councillor Thomas goes out, we'll send Councillor Gregg out to find Councillor Thomas, and then we'll send... Go ahead.
We've lost some good councillors that way. The subject of this report is Owen Sound Pride Parade 2018, June 10th, 2018. And the recommendation is to close the streets outlined in the report for the first annual Pride Parade, conditional upon the applicant providing the City of Owen Sound with liability insurance, naming the city as an additional insured in the amount of $2 million 7 days prior to the event. The proposed first annual Pride Parade will take place Sunday, June 10th, 2018 in the downtown area from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Parade assembly will be facilitated along 2nd Avenue East from 10th Street to 12th Street East beginning at 10 a.m. The 700, 800, 900, 1000, and 1100 block of 2nd Avenue East will be closed beginning at 8 a.m. to allow any parked cars to be moved prior to the event and to avoid vehicle parking in the area. The 10 a.m. closure will include the 8th Street East and 9th Street East intersections. The 11th Street, 2nd Avenue East intersection will be closed from 10 a.m. until the parade moves through. The 1100 and 1200 block will reopen once the parade has moved through. The 10th Street and 2nd Avenue East intersection will not be closed. The applicant must make arrangements with Owen Sound Police Services to direct traffic and the parade to allow safe passage of both through the intersection while the parade is in transit. Any costs associated with the traffic control will be the responsibility of the group. This is the first year of the event, Your Worship, and thus requires council approval. If approved, future parades would be staff delegated authority.
Thank you. Discussion? Go ahead.
I will move the recommendation that the first annual Pride Parade be held.
Good. Go ahead.
Sorry, just a question on the map. It shows a green line from 10th Street to 12th Street, and then a red line from 10th Street to 7th Street. What is the red line?
Go ahead. Deputy Mayor Wright, I think, has the answer.
I did ask about that. I asked Heidi about it. The red line is where the parade actually will run. The green line is where the parade is going to assemble.
Because I thought the recommendation was saying that the parade was from 10th till 12th, but that's just the assembly area. Okay, thank you.
So sort of like the Santa Claus parade, sort of, except a little closer. Okay, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. 11D, Director of Corporate Services, Third Avenue Construction.
Through your worship, this is a report recommending that council award tender 17P21 to Bridge Excavating, and this is for Phase 2 of the 3rd Avenue East reconstruction in partnership with Grey County. This is the second phase of a multi-phase project along 3rd Avenue, and this phase addresses the area between wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant. In addition, the project includes shaving and resurfacing of 9th Avenue East between 16th and 20th. The project is over budget, however, a significant portion of the variance is due to the addition of the 9th Avenue East roadwork, which was not included in the original scope of the project, and this portion will be funded through gas tax from the annual resurfacing fund. The remaining overage will be funded through the reallocation of budgeted funds resulting from changes in priorities in our capital program since the budget has been approved.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
Yes, I understand the impact of the 9th Avenue, but when you look at what the engineers had estimate, they're all over the place in terms of quite a huge variance between what the engineers calculated and what it turned up to be. For instance, the first, I'm going on memory here, the first part of it where you bring in the equipment center, the amount of that is huge, many times over what was estimated. Why are we getting such a variance from the engineers' estimates? It's both up and down.
Through you, your worship, certainly estimates are based on previous experience, particularly with repaving. There is some fair volatility in that from year to year. We've experienced that in our budgets and how much we can get done in our repaving program. So I could certainly ask the engineers to double check that, but you know, we go with our best estimates based on the information we have, but you really don't know until you send out the tender documents and you get competitive bids, and then you know exactly what it will cost you.
And that's certainly what we've run into at the county over the years. The prices are up and down based on oil and what they predict oil will be. Councillor Thomas?
I'd move this recommendation. I can say that I've had a number of people approach me to ask about 3rd Avenue East, so there'll be a lot of sighs of relief once this motion goes through.
So all in favor? That is carried. Number 12E, I believe, is from Chief Barfoot.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am here today to ask Council's permission to go move into a joint ownership for an air light truck for all of Grey County. What this is, it is a truck that is owned by Bruce Power, and it has an air compressor on it, so they can move the truck to where it's needed, and it is used for filling SCBA cylinders or all the breathing cylinders that we use when we go into a burning building. If you can remember back to the August 10th fires in the city of Owen Sound, this truck was brought into Owen Sound to help fill the cylinders because our air compressor at the station wasn't able to keep up. And so that truck was brought to the scene and was used there. To give you an idea of what's going on, Bruce Power has purchased another vehicle, and they have donated this one to all of Grey County. And the idea here is that all the Grey County fire departments will take ownership of the vehicle. It is going to be housed in the Inter-Township Fire Station. It'll be operated by their staff, and when it is put into use, it will be actually paid for by whatever the cost is of the individuals at the time. So this will be used for wherever it's needed for any of the ownership. So if it needs to go to Dundalk, it will go to Dundalk, and it will be used at the scene similar to what it was used here in August. We have a little bit of a budget here, and so we're looking at in between $400 to $500 annual fee for each fire department that's into ownership with this, and then whatever the cost is just to cover the operating cost when it's actually called in. The apparatus will also be used for mutual aid, so it could be called to Wyerton, it could be called to Port Elgin, any other mutual aid department. And at that time, it will be paid for by an MTO rate, which I believe is around $440 an hour, plus whatever the cost is for the manpower to operate it.
Good, thank you. Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would be more than happy to move that recommendation, noting how much the actual costs are, operating and annual costs are so minimal, and how much this is going to help protect not only our municipality, but our surrounding municipalities. I think it's important that we're a part of this partnership, so I'd be more than happy to move that recommendation.
Good, thank you. Others? Councillor O'Leary?
Chief, does this have to go through the association at all, or is that?
No, I hope not.
Thank you.
I would like to add something. I went over to Bruce Power on Thursday morning when the keys were handed over to us. And Chief Cummings at the time mentioned to me, he said his eyes got opened up on August 10th when our truck was called to Owen Sound. He said, you know, it never really dawned on me, but he said, Owen Sound, they're our neighbors too. And he said, this truck is yours, and he's talking to Grey County. He said, it's yours. It is a 2004. They had it safety for us. They had the air compressor gone over, an air sample test done. They've done everything in their power to make this thing brand new for us. And he said, it's your truck, you're our neighbors. Hopefully you guys can use it. So they have literally done everything that they actually can for us. So.
Great, thanks. Go ahead.
Sorry, thanks, Your Worship. When you mentioned, sorry, Doug, Chief, when you mentioned that, actually, it just made a click in my mind. I know how we currently are dealing with our fleet management process, where it goes through, we have to kind of update our fleet every so many years, right? The new process to meet our standards. Would this unit, now when we take ownership of it, would be following those same guidelines?
Again, this isn't classified as a frontline truck. So when you're into a fire department, a frontline truck, it's 15 years, it goes into a backup role. This is not under that classification. This is something totally new for Grey County. Okay, so this is there as a service vehicle, but it's there on a backup role for any large incidents.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, thank you. Call the question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. 12F, is it? Yeah. From Pam.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application by Mudtown Station Brewery for a facade grant for proposed new building signage. So the signage is shown in the attachments to the report, and it includes a logo up on the mast part of the building, as well as individual letter signs that really replicate the original CPR building signage. So the facade program guidelines specifically support new or replacement facade signage, especially signs consisting of individual decorative letters on the facade that enhance the architectural characteristics of the building. As Council is well aware, this building is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and is to receive priority under the program. The Ontario Heritage Trust has approved the signage as required by the Ontario Heritage easement on the building. They have asked for a few conditions, including the use of stainless steel fasteners, and that wherever possible we drill into the mortar rather than the brick. So the overall project cost is $5,650, and the facade grant would be $1,865. So through you, Your Worship, we're recommending approval subject to the 12 conditions, including those required by the Trust.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Worship. I'll be happy to move that recommendation, and this is certainly a welcome business in Owen Sound.
Any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That is carried. The visuals look pretty amazing. It'll look really good. 12G, oral report, verbal report from Deputy Mayor Wright on Grey County. Anything to report?
No report.
Nothing to report. Good, thanks. Consent agenda, Ms. Bloomfield.
Through your worship, on the consent agenda is comments on a planning notice for Meaford, minutes for receipt from the Library Board, Police Board, Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, and the Owen Sound Housing Company. Sydenham Family Dentistry, located at 964 First Avenue West, was issued its business license, and there's correspondence received which is presented for the information of Council. A full listing is available at 13G.
Good, thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Moved by myself, Councillor Gregg, that City Council receives items 13A to 13G on the consent agenda dated April 9th, 2018.
Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. So going back to 13B, Library. Councillor Thomas, nothing to report?
Thanks, Your Worship. These are the January 25th minutes, which when I read them last week, seemed like a long way away, and then it snowed all weekend, and they didn't seem so long away after all. I guess that the key takeaway from this meeting was the appointment of a deputy chief librarian for the first time in a number of years, and that would be Nadia Daniluk, who many of you will know as our youth services librarian. I think it's a wonderful step up for Nadia, and it helps us with succession planning at the library. And that would be the key thing, I think, that took place at that meeting, plus a discussion of the new roof we're going to get. It's rather important in a library to have a good roof, as it turns out, so that'll be coming up this year. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none. Next is On Sound Police Services Board. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of points from the February 28th minutes. Marketing has begun for the upcoming conference that the Owen Sound Police Services is hosting on the 17th and 18th of April. The conference, titled Human Trafficking, will be offered to law enforcement as well as health and social services agencies. Many speakers will be involved, and more information can be found on the Owen Sound Police Service website. Chief Stornberger continues to build on what I call a renewed working relationship with the Director of Corporate Services, Kate Allen. The Chief has asked for assistance regarding the 2019 budget moving forward and continues to be open and transparent as we get closer to the Police Services review. The Police Board has sent a letter to the Ministry regarding video security cameras at the courthouse. There's been issues with about 40 cameras now, and we've had to beef up security because of it. This comes with added costs, and we'll have to recover those costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Both you want. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Byrie. I've got two questions, and the first one, I wondered if I could, the first one here. There's a reference about the police board donating money to a walk. I just wonder if I could get more details about that. It's coming from the police board, but I think we fund the police board as a council, and I don't presume there would be a motion to ask council to donate money. You know, we have 2 firefighters off right now, I believe, on PTSD. So I'm wondering why the police board is donating. And secondly, the court cameras, I'm just wondering if council should be taking a more affirmative action to support the police board at this time and lobbying for support from the province.
Well, first on the cameras, I think the letter that we sent has already caught the attention of a few from what we were told at the last meeting, so I think there's going to be some action with the cameras. As far as the money that we donated, that was a walk that is put on by the police association, and the board just decided that because it's our own people that are putting on the walk, that we should support it. But if you want to pull it from there and have council, I'm not sure what the process is.
I don't think we can. Once we've approved the budget for the police board, we don't have any authority to dictate what the police board does with that money once it's there.
Okay, well, that is the explanation. The walk is put on by the police association, and the board felt that they should be supporting.
Jim, you had your hand up?
And you just touched on the police, the review, the police services review. Could you do you have any update on that?
Actually, we do, not on these minutes, but at our last meeting, we had a teleconference with Joe Levac, and he will be here in the last week of April to do interviews with staff. So we had the opportunity, everyone on the board had the opportunity to have their input in terms of the process here and ask Joe questions. And so he'll be here the last week of April, and the goal that we have set is to wrap that up by the end of June.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Would you anticipate that, so he's going to do the review, he'll issue a report. How will council, will council be involved? I'm just, how does it work through the process, I guess what I'm asking.
Well, maybe I could refer to the city manager, but I think the plan is, it's a 2-month process for him after he's done the interviews. But I think when this is going to be a presentation to council, I believe. I know that we've asked.
Be to the police board first, but, yeah.
But it's ultimately going to be a council decision when it's all said and done. Good question.
Further?
No, that's good. So the report will go to police board, the police board will discuss, debate, come back, I'm assuming, with a recommendation, and that would come to council as a presentation? Is that?
Well,
I know maybe we're getting too far ahead here.
No, I think it's a good point, because it was actually council that made the recommendation in the first place to have that done. And so I think it's only right that, that'll come back to the police board, the presentation will be made to the police board, and then city council afterwards.
It's certainly, what is planned or what's indicated is to cooperate with council and with that request. So it would be coming back here. We haven't really discussed that for far along from what I understand, but what I recall.
Thank you.
But it's certainly intended that it would be a public thing once the report comes back and that it would come to council. Yeah. Mr. Ritchie?
If I could, Your Worship, certainly Ms. Allen will be providing the city's perspective on the financial aspects, and we've worked with Mr. Levesque before, and I'm sure it will be a very worthwhile effort and report. So Ms. Allen will be involved.
Okay. That answers? Good, thank you. Anything else, Councillor O'Leary, on that? No? Municipal Non-Profit Housing Corporation and Owen Sound Housing Company. Councillor Lemon, anything to report?
Well, things are moving ahead in terms of the construction of the 28 units. It's going to be opening midsummer, and we're also now starting to work on the additional 8 units that have been allocated, and that construction will be starting just as the other construction slows down, and will continue through the winter to open next year. This is a total of 36 new units, most of which will be fully accessible units, of which there's a great shortage in our area, and this will help with that shortage. But we still have a need for more social housing, and we're hoping the recent federal budget, which indicated 25 billion, I believe it is, for social housing over the next 5 years, recognize the importance of it and the significance to the economy of Ontario.
Good, thank you. I think that gets us all the way through the consent agenda, so we're up to number 14. Committee minutes with recommendations for approval, starting with 14A from Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'm not sure who's doing that. Councillor McManaman, can you?
Sure, I can discuss that. We discussed the 3rd Avenue East, Gray Road 15 reconstruction that was just discussed here at council not long ago from accessibility perspective. The committee had no concerns with the report as it was given. We have, for the upcoming 2018 election, we have an accessibility plan as per the Municipal Act, the Election Act, and quite a number of features for accessibility for the upcoming election. I could go through them all, but I think I would just highlight that anyone who has a concern with accessibility should contact City Hall, because we have numerous ways to make it easier for people to vote. Just reminding people that the 2018 election will be internet and telephone voting. It'll be between October 12th and October 22nd that you're allowed to vote. There's all staff, election staff will be getting training in accessibility features. They will try and work with individuals on a format that works for them. There will be help centers set up during the voting period located at City Hall, the Legion, the Rec Center, Heritage Place Mall, and the Bayshore. Those are all different days. Go to our website to to see those. But again, I think the main message to take out of that, if there's a concern for yourself or perhaps a parent or somebody who may need assistance, contact City Hall, because we'll be able to assist you. A request was made, quite often accessibility deals with plans and plans for different developments, about tactile graphics for people with visual impairments, and the manager of information technology is coming back with several options, whether it's a different printer or different paper, specialized paper, so people that have visual problems can tactile feel the map, I guess is the best way to put that. And I believe the last item we dealt with was a redevelopment of that's going to take place at 872 and 884 10th Street West. That's the top of 10th Street West, where it meets Alpha Street just before you leave the city. That former gas station is going to become a gas station again, along with a gas bar, convenience store, and a drive-through restaurant. So that site is a bit of a challenge since it's a triangle, so there were some issues around accessibility as far as lighting was discussed, the sidewalk along Alpha Street, how it will cut through the site to get over to 10th Street. The committee recommended tactile walking strips to let people know when they're leaving the walking surface and entering an area where a car may be, and that the pedestrian pathways across the site be not just paint, because that can be slippery, that it be hopefully a concrete surface. I believe that was, there was an issue raised, sorry, last one, there was an issue raised about the audible pedestrian signals at 9th Street and 2nd Avenue East. They're not working properly. The staff are aware of that, and parts are in order to remedy the situation. So if anybody noticed that there's a problem, we know there's a problem there too. With that, Your Worship, I would move these minutes.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of those minutes? That is carried. Thank you. 14B, City Hall Accommodation Ad Hoc, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. The President of Cybro Construction, Roger Rowe, joined our meeting by teleconference. He asked the committee for a 1-month extension to complete the contract. The city would therefore require an additional month lease from the professional center at a cost of $21,000. Roger committed to paying for the 1-month extension during the call. The completion date is May 31st, and the month of June will be post-project closeout with inspections, balancing, commissioning, and address any deficiencies. The furniture, installation, training, and relocation of staff and belongings will require up to 4 weeks after the construction is complete. The city has now paid Cybro Construction $3,617,780.14, which is about 55% of the approved construction budget. Committee and staff will continue to push hard with the schedule. In particular, Kristen Schreider will continue to work closely with the construction supervisor to push the progress along without interfering with the quality of work. The project continues to be on budget. And with that, Your Worship, I would move approval of those minutes.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. 14C is minutes of Community Services Committee. I think, Councillor O'Leary, you chaired that for Councillor McManaman?
I did, thank you. Committee and staff, hang on a sec. The committee discussed a recommendation from the Director of Community Services regarding the Owen Sound Rowing Club. The committee agreed to a 5-year lease with a flat land use fee of $900 a year. The fee is indexed over the 5-year term of the agreement based on the Ontario Consumer Price Index. The rowing club will also be responsible for any property taxes assessed by MPAC. There was amendments made by the city's sign by law. Some of the highlights include regulating window signage and window film in the core commercial zones, increasing the allowable signage in the industrial zones, and altering the height and protrusion requirements of projecting and fascia signs to correspond with the building code. There was a follow-up report from the events facilitator regarding the 2018 Cultural Awards. Following the report, the committee made the following recommendations. Change the Cultural Awards nominations and ceremony to take place every other year as a means to increase the number of nominations. change the awards title to Arts and Cultural Awards, modify the nomination form to simplify the process, and grant the jury the ability to create an honorable mention recognition for any award. The event's facilitator presented a report explaining the draft partnership agreement for the upcoming Home and Cottage Expo. Councillor Dodd inquired about the net proceeds being equally split between the three organizations that sponsor the event, and if each of the organizations perform 1/3 of the work that is required to prepare and run the show. It was discovered that the bulk of the time commitment and work that happens beforehand to prepare for the expo is actually performed by city staff. As a result, the committee has asked the Manager of Community Development and Marketing to bring back a wrap-up report with pros and cons so we can discuss possible changes moving forward. Manager of Parks and Open Space reported on the 2018 DIA maintenance contract, and there was a recommendation to go ahead and execute that agreement. It was determined that the dugouts at the Tom Williams Ballpark are unsafe for occupancy and need to be replaced. The committee is asking for monies from the Tom Williams Fund totaling $10,000, subject to approval from the executors and Mr. Horton on behalf of the estate. The junior planner presented a report regarding the Grey County official plan, which has been named Recolor Grey. This plan sets the goals and provides directions for the next 20 years. There's a total of 11 question points being sent back to the county. This is very important because once this goes to the province, we won't have any input at all. The recommendation also requests notice of any decision and a copy of the county staff report. This was a very good and thorough report from the planning department. And we ended the night with the public meeting. After the committee meeting, there was a public stakeholder meeting to kick off the retail and commercial policy review. The goal of this review is to ensure the policies of the official plan with respect to retail and commercial policies are responsive to current and emerging trends and achieve the goals and objectives City Council is committed to, particularly supporting the vibrancy of the downtown. This review will assess retail and commercial policies, current trends, and the goals and objectives of the city in order to provide recommendations that make sense for Owen Sound and its residents and stakeholders. The stakeholder meeting was well attended and had representatives from a wide range of commercial sectors, from the DIA to large players in the East City commercial area to large residential developers in the Sydenham Heights. Public input is really important to generating the options for the review. The online survey on the main page of the city website has had a lot of responses, and it is open until April 18th. Take a few minutes and complete the survey at www.owensound.ca. And with that, Your Worship, I move approval of those minutes.
Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, Mayor Bai. There's a couple items I'd like to discuss a little further. I'd like to look at, the first one is under B1. It's the official plan comments going to the county. I'm supportive of just about everything here. However, we are requesting in the one paragraph that on the Sunset Strip area, we request that banks and personal service shops be removed as a permitted use in this designation. I recognize that in Orillia and in Sarnia, some banks have left their downtowns, and I am the utmost advocate to have our banks located downtown because it was proven a year ago in our in a DIA study that's the #1 thing to bring people downtown. But there's probably not a person in this room who in their life has ever used a bathroom or consumed water in a bank while they're visiting there. I think that's utterly ridiculous that we're asking the county to put banks into that permitted land use. We want them here, but that's absolutely ridiculous. That's my comments there. Second one is B2, is a planning report. And we're looking to regulate window signage and window film in the core commercial zone. There's some buildings that I think of Hanover Travel, which now has a new name that has this window film, and it looks terrific. I read this, I've never had any comments to me about people worrying about their safety because of window signs or window film. People that comment to me about their personal safety is because there's someone that's spending the time in the hallway or the foyer of a bank at some obscene hour that scares them from using that service. I had an attempted murder in my store in January. I was the last guy that saw him before he was arrested by the police. That's what scares people and makes them comment about their safety downtown. Like, can we tackle the real issues if we've got the courage? But to read about this window signage and window film and be telling businesses what they should be doing with their window fronts, I've had no comments at all, ever, about that. And RE/MAX was used as an example. I think it looks great. So I'm not sure if we can send that back for further comment, if I can hear why that ever came forward to begin with. But I know firsthand, companies that wholesale or provide products for our businesses to sell downtown. I can tell you one big company that a year ago told their investors that for us to reach $50 billion in revenue, we are going from 40,000 doors to approximately 30 or 40 in North America. So that gives you a little bit of insight as to how hard retailers and businesses work on their own to make this work. And I think this is a level of oversight that is completely unnecessary.
Go ahead.
Well, I know at the committee meeting, one of the things that was brought up is security with police. That when they're walking the beat, they're walking by in the middle of the night, they want to be able to see inside a store. If it's got a film over it and they can't see inside, then they can't see what's on the other side.
Go ahead, Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Worship. Just on the 2 points, the Sunset Strip planning area is one over the years that the city has provided on a number of occasions input into planning applications. Something that's been reflected in historic official plans and zoning bylaws is this notion of dry commercial uses. And while the patrons in banks may not be using washrooms, their staff, there may be significant needs for washrooms. Personal services shops include things like laundromats, hairdressing stores. So that's why those were recommended for removal. In terms of the sign bylaw, these are sort of housekeeping amendments, and staff have used the bylaw since 2014. It's hard to believe it's been 4 years that new bylaw has been in place, and we've kept track of the things that have sort of raised concerns or raised issues. And the window film sign, whether it's on the inside or outside of windows, is a new advertising medium, and it's effective, and it's it's quite it can be quite visually appealing. We wanted to balance that with making sure that we're still having a heritage downtown, as well as the concern in terms of safety. If you're walking down the street and you can't see anything that's in a store, you don't know what might come out. So that was sort of the thinking behind that. And limiting to 50% of the window area in the downtown. I think it's important to note that anything in terms of existing signage would be exempt. Murals and that sort of things that are not considered signage under the zoning or under the sign bylaw. So if it's not meant to draw attention to a business. So if it's a real estate office and it's just a heritage mural, or I think Councillor Lemon at the meeting mentioned the heritage murals at Shoppers Drug Mart. Those are not signage because the heritage murals have nothing to do with what Shoppers Drug Mart is promoting and selling. They would be exempt under the sign bylaw. So that would be the rationale and the background to that recommended amendment by staff.
Do you have a follow-up? Did you have an answer first? Hold on.
No, I just want to talk about what's happening.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for, we just cannot do that to businesses. What'll happen is if we want to try to enforce that kind of oversight, we will have an empty downtown instead of a thriving downtown or a heritage-looking downtown, but it'll be an empty downtown. We are getting way too involved in trying to dictate, you know, if there's a company would like to work with a shop downtown and work on some signage and help them increase their revenues, then we should be supportive of that, but not undermining those efforts. Those reasons just aren't valid enough to be writing that kind of literature into a sign bylaw. And, you know, on the banks too, I mean, on the Sunset Strip, the car dealerships use more water servicing in the bays and in the grocery store, but.
Okay, so, go ahead.
I just, I should probably tell you where we're at. The mayor and I attended a public meeting on the 27th up at the county building, and it was very well attended. There were a number of people there, and I would say there were approximately 10 to 12 speakers. Is that, would you
Yeah,
concur?
for the official plan, the special meeting.
Yes, for the
yeah,
official
okay.
plan, and it was they were very good speakers, and I have talked to the planners about the city's report. I got a copy of the city's report a while ago from the planners, and we've talked about the report. Now, what's happening now, and the provincial comments have come back about the report as well, and we got a report about that. So the county is now going to rewrite the official plan. So it will be rewritten, and then it will be sent out again, and then there's a 30-day review period. So we will have 30 days within that time frame to go over it again and to see what we want to do. Some of the things that we have in our report may not appear in the next 30-day period. Some of them might. I don't know. I have no idea what will be in there. But the report will then come back to council, and the decision on accepting the report will be made in July. So there's still time. There's still a 30-day period that we get to review the rewritten report.
Councillor Lemon?
Well, supporting Councillor Gregg in his concern, anything that impedes the downtown businesses, to me, is exactly the wrong thing to do at this point. We have a lot of empty stores, unfortunately, more than anybody wants. And companies advertise. And using the window, like, to me, that's not a sign. That's part of the advertising of the business. And we have no obligation, as far as I'm concerned, to interfere with what the stores do and that type of thing. We should be encouraging them to make the downtown interesting, and quite frankly, some of these window covering treatments are very, very effective. I've seen them done in a number of areas, but things have changed. Merchandising has changed. Let's get with it and support the downtown, because quite frankly, this kind of, I just don't believe that the planning department should be getting involved in telling a merchant how to run his business.
Wait a minute, that's such a leap, Peter. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be sticking my nose into this. This is about signs. This
Yeah.
isn't about telling somebody how to run their business.
Well, signage
Draw
is
it back in. You've taken a big leap here.
Signage is part of business.
Excuse me, sorry. Go ahead.
It's an important part of business. It's $1 billion business. And if a corporate, supposing I have a store selling paint, and they want to put some kind of a colored thing to show what you can do with paint on the window of the store, what harm is that? I don't see any harm.
Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to actually take a different stance on this, because I want to ask just a fair question to the Director of Community Services. How much in the last 10 years have we provided to the Heritage Facade grants of making sure that our downtown community stays with a heritage design? I don't need a full number. I'm just using that as an example. Why do we have a program and a grant funding application to maintain a heritage look and feel that we've been investing money, taxpayers' money into, and then we're going to open up and say, but you can put anything you want on the windows and take away from that historical and heritage look and feel of the downtown community? You know what? A lot of people use this film, but do I think if we limit how much film they're allowed to put on their window, do you think that's going to stop them from having an attainable and affordable business or successful business? Absolutely not. If someone is putting a film up there and that's their revenue source and that's what's keeping them up above the line, that's a completely different discussion. But I just don't understand why we're even having this discussion, to be honest, when we invest so much money into the downtown community, so much money into maintaining a heritage feel for the downtown buildings. We see that of how many buildings have been retrofitted to go back to its old historical view. And then we want to put up, you're saying that these film signs are like that. The purpose of this is to maintain a heritage view of our downtown. If you don't see that, then why are we giving out facade grants to maintain the heritage facade? Why don't we cut that grant? Because then we can just have a hog wild, do whatever we want downtown, and we can do advertising anything we want. That's easy. But if we're going to focus on maintaining a heritage, that's what we're doing. That's what we've invested in for 10 years of retrofitting some of these buildings to go back to our old view, then there's something else that needs to go with it. And if that means limiting film sign to 50% of a window, sure.
Thanks. Others? Councilor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. Just on the Sunset Strip comments, appreciating what the Deputy Mayor has said. We are asked for comment. We've given comments. Personally, I have no problem with the comments that are there, but either way, it's all going to come back to council again. So my personal view would let's just move forward with that. On the window signage issue, I wasn't going to comment, but the planning department doesn't decide anything, council does, as you're well aware. We have implemented a signage bylaw, 4 years ago now, that sets limits on different signage, as Councillor Dodd just said very eloquently, that to promote our heritage downtown. When this bylaw came forward over the last 4 years, there have been numerous times where issues have been raised, have been dealt with. That's just like any bylaw. It's a living document almost to state that that from time to time it will need to be amended and changed. I personally don't have any problem with a 50% covering. If others do, okay, we can review it and look at it again. I personally, I don't think it's not going, I think the whole reason it's there is for the heritage feature of the downtown, as Councillor Dodd said. And I mean, I guess, could it be 25%? Could it be 100%? But there's numerous other good items in this package, so I would suggest we can go on and debate this forever. Committee had a good, thorough discussion on it. They decided to recommend this. Let's, if we want to send something back to committee, send it back. If we don't, let's move forward with it. I personally think this is acceptable, but those are my comments.
Councillor Kepke?
I have nothing further, Your Worship.
Further? Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks. I would ask that regulating window signage portion be removed and sent back to the committee for further review. At this time, I don't have any concerns with the rest of it, but I think the bricks and mortar work that's being done on the heritage aspects is far different than trying to include the window work into the same argument. The window facade program, the facade program is working terrifically, and by and large, it's been bricks and mortar and enhancing the overall physical appeal and support of the structures. I think it's separate from this, so I would ask that component be removed from item B2.
Going to ask Ms. Bloomfield, the motion is already on the floor for approval of the entire package of minutes. How do we do this?
It's up to the mover of the motion if you wish to separate it.
So I'll change mine. I'll move the minutes excluding the item.
So that's little b sub 2, I think, in the, so moving the minutes with the exception of that?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Coulter, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, are they removing the other components of the sign bylaw or just the sign bylaw with respect to C1? The amendment with respect to the industrial zone, I know we have businesses in that area that are anxious for that to proceed, so just looking for clarification.
So it would be just the first dot on there, the first point.
Yeah, just
It's your motion, you.
right there. Yeah, it's moved by Councillor Dodd in report 180321005, that in consideration of staff report respecting amendments, there's 1, 2, and 3. It's the item 1 from that.
Okay. You got that? Okay. So on Councillor O'Leary's motion to move the minutes, approval of the minutes, save and accept that part, all in favor? That is carried. Now, Councillor Gregg, what are you doing with that part?
Thanks. I would ask that that item 1 be returned to Community Services for further consideration.
Okay, further, perfect. We've discussed the daylights out of it. All in favor of that motion? 2 opposed? Everyone else, so that is defeated. I'm going to go back to you, Councillor O'Leary, with regard to that section of the minutes. So you're moving that they're approved with the rest of the minutes.
So I'm moving that they're included in the rest of the minutes.
No, that they're passed. We're going to vote on them separately. So we're just approving that section.
Okay. You got it. She's got it.
I was asking for a recorded vote.
Just hold on, Peter. Ms. Bloomfield's got it. Does everyone else understand it? Yeah. Go ahead.
I thought we already voted on the minutes, save and accept that one.
Yes.
And then we pulled it and voted on that, and it was defeated. So now we're only voting on that one item.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Okay, all in favor? Voting first. Yeah, all in favor? Yep. So it's going to be carried now, recorded vote. Go ahead.
Councillor Dodd,
In favor.
Councillor Gregg,
Opposed?
Councillor Kepke,
In favor?
Councillor Lemon,
Opposed?
Councillor McManaman,
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary,
In favor.
Councillor Thomas,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Wright. In favor. Mayor Body.
In favor?
The motion is carried with 7 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thank you. Now, 14D, do you have it in your list, Councillor Gregg? On your sheets? No? Okay. Councillor O'Leary, I'll ask you just to move. There is closed minutes from your Community Services Committee that we won't be discussing here. We discussed them in closed session. So you're just moving? the-
Okay, I would move those minutes of the closed session.
Okay. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. 11E is Corporate Services Committee. Go ahead.
Yeah, 14E. Thanks, Mayor Body. Further, I'm going to leave a couple of the lengthier reports, which was our tax ratio policy and our 2017 budget review till the end. So I'm just going to speak on a couple of the smaller ones first. Just to bring council up to date, a month ago we had taken a look at potentially saving some money by changing an insurance provider to Cigna. However, during that meeting, staff has now learned that Cigna is no longer taking Canadian clients. So we were hoping for potential savings of $146,000 over 3 years. However, that will clearly not materialize, and staff are still looking for alternatives. So that was just some follow-up from the previous minutes. The first report I'll speak to is 42. It is a follow-up report on a requested smoke-free bylaw for the hospital. The staff at the hospital we're recommending their security not enforce the smoking regulations inside the hospital. From a bylaw perspective, it's a very good report that you've had the chance to read, and it does detail the various reasons why the city does not want to take on the role of enacting a bylaw and then enforcing it. The smoking offenses are considered a Part 1 offense, meaning that there's a very high impact to municipal staff to enforce. It ranges from ensuring issued tickets are filed within 7 days, records maintenance, and defending the ticket issuance in court if needed, which means you're also then hiring a prosecutor to represent the municipality. Options included 1, not implementing a bylaw, 2, asking the upper tier to investigate a bylaw, and 3, implement a smoke-free bylaw. Committee was unanimous in option 1, which was to not implement such a bylaw. Report 46 was comments from our fire chief. He has submitted them to the Ministry of Community Safety and Correction regarding 3 draft regulations in an update to the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. So in the report, that's the FPPA. The first item was certification, and our concerns with this is that we already currently require all our new hires to be certified, and the impact is that all staff being certified to the level of their specific duties could result in a higher level of overtime being accrued, as officers and prevention staff who are already trained would have to be trained and certified to higher levels. It's unclear on who would do this or how would training be done or the timelines that would be given, and obviously leads to a lot of costs of backfilling the station with overtime. The potentiality of needing to pay officers more if determined added work of becoming an officer is not worth the financial reward is also considered very real. Community risk assessment is another part of the draft. It's a current proposal to compare municipalities. All municipalities, as expressed by the chief, should stay on top of their own community risk assessment. We know ours that we do. And to do this, by comparing to municipalities, not only is extremely difficult, it may not be possible to achieve accurately. It also could open up the municipality or leave us exposed to financial burdens due to leapfrogging with other municipalities as the community risk assessments always adapting, and a comparator or a continual comparator. And number 3 is public reports, which is proposed language that is vague in the draft and does not align with the current FPPA language. The reports would be to include tiered response medical calls, which are not a fire department responsibility. It could be a wedge to bring fire medic programs into Ontario and to lead to fire service levels being dictated to municipalities, precipitating higher taxpayer costs and exposure to litigation from legislative response time. So those are the comments. We've already communicated those to the ministry on the draft update to the Fire Protection Act. Item 45 is our monthly time management review. You'll see the month of February is covered there. We had 2 fire calls with a loss value of $3,500. We averaged 1 tiered response call per day, 56 emergency response calls in February, and we had 100 hours of overtime in February, which was almost double the month of January. 3 members on LTD. However, if accidental and the not requireds are eliminated from the time management stats, you'll see that it was a very quiet month in February. Then I'll move to the meatier part of the meeting, which was the first meeting is the tax policy that we're setting for 2018. And at this point, this is where I'm going to proclaim this council meeting is the good news council meeting for the public. At budget acceptance, the municipal levy was set at $28.995 million, which was a 2.39% increase over 2017. The combined increase, including the county and the education, was forecast at 1.78%. changes come about from changes come about from either valuation change, which, as you recall from the 2016 market assessment, values increased less than 1% in 2017 on the residential households, and 2, growth. During the year 2017, real growth was $27.919 million in current value assessment, which is a large improvement over just over $6 million from 2016. It's about, I think, 1.4% over 0.3% a year prior. This growth, as you saw in the report, allows the policy to shift the following, to allow us to continue a migration towards the county multi-residential rate, which is 1.44. We are enabled to reduce our commercial ratio to 1.88, and we're able to harmonize our large industrial tax rate with the industrial tax rate, which will be 2.22931, and I think there's another number missing in there yet. It was estimated at budget time of the increase of 1.78% to the average household. The acceptance of the scenario endorsed by the committee would lower the increase to 1.08% for the average household, or a dollar increase of $38.65 annually, which I think from memory might be down from $56 maybe at budget time, 56 or 58 possibly. It's interesting to note that after many years, the education levy, it has been decreased. The province had been grabbing both the valuation increases and growth without lowering the tax rate for many years, but since it's interesting, it's an election year, so then down comes the education tax rate. So if there's, actually I'll maybe break here before I go into the year-end report, if there's specific questions to the tax policy or the recommendation from committee, if they'd like to be asked now, and we can refer to Kate then for more information. Peter?
Did I hear you say that we've now reached harmonization for the large industrial?
Why don't we go to Kate and get her to maybe, there's anything that she wants to add that would help us.
Through your worship, yes, the large industrial rate has now been equalized with the residual rate in this proposal.
Well, my congratulations, because when we started on this balancing program, as Wayne will remember, we were far, far apart on that. And so the commercial rate's not as getting close to, or how close are we on that?
With the commercial rate, we only have one commercial rate, or do you mean to match up with the county?
To match with the county.
We are working on there's a 4 more year plan in order to get those in line.
Oh, we're getting there.
We are.
Thank you.
Mr. Ritchie, is there anything you want? No, covered it. Okay. Councillor Gregg? Or, sorry, the other way, Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. I was just wondering maybe if Councillor Gregg or maybe the Director of Corporate Services could just once again highlight that that new number that's going to be applied to the residential tax rate overall.
Certainly. So overall, we did look at 4 major changes in the ratios. One was to reduce the multi-residential rate, and that's to meet legislative requirements as well as to move towards the county ratios. We reduced commercial rates somewhat, again, to move towards county ratios, and we equalized the large industrial with the residual industrial rate. The result of that would be a decrease in the typical property taxes that would be paid by a multi-residential property, and I just sort of randomly chose a typical property myself. That property's total taxes paid decreasing by about $5,000. On the commercial, typical property was remaining about stable, so although we do have an increase, taxes on those commercial properties are estimated to remain the same as in the prior year. And probably the biggest impact will be on the 4 large industrial properties that the city has. And on the typical one that I selected, we're seeing a reduction in their annual tax bill of $60,000 in 2017. And in turn, that burden pattern does have to shift, and it is the residential class that picks up those decreases. However, the average assessed home is only going up by 1.08%, or $38.65 a year. So we're able to accomplish those other shifts and still keep the burden from being too high on the residential taxpayer, and that's because of growth. That's a good news story, and that's the impact of growth on our tax bills.
So again, the average house tax on the average residence is going up 1.08% this year.
That's correct.
Good, thank you. Other questions? Seeing none? More to fill in?
We'll move to Report 41, which was a review of the year 2017. And as you'll see, it resulted in a surplus of $90,000. That is contrary to 2016, where we had a net deficit of $580,000. So a very positive 2017, as the last two reports have displayed. The recommendation from committee is to transfer the surplus to a reserve to offset expenditures, which could result in tax levy increases in the future. I'll bring to your attention a few particular line items, which, I mean, many of these you're already quite familiar with, the cost overage at the summer celebration. Many of these we've covered many times. But $320,000 in overage in winter control. This has us now back to where we were prior to the $150,000 that council had cut from the budget prior to 2016. We're now actually back to the same level of winter control budgeted. Staff-related costs were $190,000 under budget. Insurance with the new provider yielded $46,000 under budget. TAC revenue from the playoffs resulted in $50,000, so that's why you'll all be, and everyone will be cheering so hard and mightily tonight in the same building. It pays off financially as well. Recycling commodities increased $100,000 in additional revenue, and our traffic contract resulted in $50,000 less in expenditure. That's the work that's done to maintain street lights and intersections. We had tax write-offs, which exceeded the budget by $225,500. I will note that this is still just the second year after the implementation of the new market assessment that was done by MPAC, so we saw much more volatility last year. This year still saw some, and we expect that to be a quieter year next year. We also had a $25,000 cost, which was not in the budget, to provide swim lessons with the YMCA. That was due to an oversight at budget time. And an additional $100,000 in interest on the line of credit, which we were utilizing during the large capital construction jobs that had been done. We've got in the report, for the first time, extensive information on the Tom Thompson Art Gallery budgets. And at the end of the report, you'll also note in particular that Water Services had a $2.1 million operating surplus, which after transfer to the reserves and after capital spending in 2017 has the year-end reserve at just over $2 million. And wastewater generated an operating surplus of $824,000, which post-capital spending resulted in a surplus, which has lowered our deficit moving forward from the year prior, which was $536,000, to just over $307,000 for the year end. So any questions on those? Or Kate would be glad to take them.
Good.
And with that too, I'll ask for acceptance of those minutes.
Approval of, okay. Any questions? Seeing none. Mr. Ritchie, I've got just a couple questions. I want to fill in a couple blanks on the art gallery financials. That report that came out to the committee was looking at strictly the city's financial commitment or portion of the art gallery. We know we've got a foundation, and it holds money separately, and its mandate is to support the art gallery. I understand we received a letter from the foundation a few months ago.
through your worship, certainly, yes, we did, and Miss Allen has a written statement here of, I guess, our explanation for the art gallery, the foundation, everything, so perhaps I will let her speak.
I can just ask some real simple questions. You don't have to give a statement. If we
All
can
right.
just get some yeses or some no's.
Yes, we did get a letter from
So we
the
received a
foundation.
letter, and I understand in that letter, they advised that they returned $75,000 that they had received to Trillium, or to one of the granting agencies?
The letter said that that was their intention. That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Allen, you did a full review of all of the gallery's finances over the last period of time, and BDO, being an external accounting firm, came in and did a specific audit on the betwixt and between,
That's correct as well.
and it was required under one of the granting agencies that they had to do that audit.
That's right.
In their audit, or in your review, was there any sign that money was taken, stolen, spent somewhere else?
No, absolutely not. And I think the year-end report, I tried to highlight, really the outcome here is a result of optimistic budgeting for revenues and committed expenses, where the revenues didn't necessarily come in as they were anticipated, but the expenses were already committed. So we had a revenue shortfall, and that was the reason for the deficit in 2017.
So absolutely spending more than revenue in.
That's right.
Okay. I just want to make that clear for the public that has been raising a lot of questions, asking about criminal intent and all kinds of things. There was no money stolen. Nothing was misappropriated outside of the art gallery. The money was spent there. It just wasn't budgeted properly is the main part that I wanted to get at. Thanks. So with that, any other questions? Going to call the question. All in favor? Approval of those minutes? Carried. So it comes down to last ones, I think, are Councillor Thomas with regard to the art gallery.
Thanks, Your Worship. We had our second meeting of the Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee, and most of that meeting was spent in discussion of what's going to happen over there at the gallery moving forward. As this is a new advisory committee, a good deal of the discussion was spent discussing what exactly the advisory committee would do, because it is a new group and it has a new mandate. One of the keys, and I think I mentioned this at our last council meeting, is going to be public outreach, re-engaging the community in the Tom Thompson Art Gallery, and bringing a renewed interest in the gallery back to our community. We haven't decided how we're going to do that yet. We have decided that that's going to be one of the key goals of the advisory committee, and we'll certainly continue with those discussions as we go forward. Other things, we had a report from the acting director. The new gallery website is live. We are presently searching for a new guest services and membership coordinator, and a staff report is coming to our next meeting regarding operating grants for the coming year. The Betwixt and Between show will conclude in Oshawa at the Robert McLaughlin Gallery on April 15th, and then that will be it for that show. It'll be mothballed after that. And staff is working away on exhibitions for 2018-2019, just to determine. And there are going to be a lot of really interesting ones. Specifically this summer, we have a celebration of the 125th anniversary of Ontario Provincial Parks, and that will be a full-on group of 7 exhibition of works that we own at the gallery. So that'll be a show not to be missed, and there'll certainly be some community outreach around that. So with that, I'd move that we approve these minutes.
Anyone else have questions? I got one for you. I'm just trying to cover off the same things. You talked that the gallery's going to hire somebody. That will take the complement of employees up to 5.
That's correct. When everything changed at the gallery, we came back down to 5 staff. One of those staff chose to leave and pursue another opportunity, so we are simply replacing a staff member who has recently left.
A year ago, we had 13 or 14 employees. We've got 4 right now.
4 at present, yeah.
Good, thanks. Approval of the minutes? Is anyone voting? Peter, you voting? You approving the minutes? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thanks. Matters postponed, there are no postponed matters. There are no motions for which notice was previously given. Additional business. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to extend congratulations to the Community Foundation Grey Bruce on exceeding their goal in the Smart and Caring Community Fund. This is a fund that was set up as a new educational endowment funds to support Grey Bruce students in their studies. There are 496 funding sources with a total of over $650,000 available to students to support diverse education pathways. Students can go on to www.payforschoolgraybruce.com to find out any areas that they might like to look for some assistance to help them meet their educational goals. This announcement was made recently at the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program Regional Skills Competition at Georgian College at the end of May. So congratulations to the donors and Community Foundation for managing those funds and putting them to great uses. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to give a quick update from the last time we brought this up at Council about the Young Professionals event that happened at Hartwood Hall back on March 8th. It happened. It was a great success. It was a sellout crowd. Statistics just came in now from when we did the Survey Monkey that came back from it. So that's going to be presented more through economic development with Savannah and myself. And so we do have another event that's going to be coming up in June of this year to once again try to recapture some of those young professionals in the region and keep them entertained and keep them enthused. And then I think there'll be maybe one more coming up in the fall. But some quick stats anyways that just came out from what we got, which I thought were really interesting. 57% of the attendees to that event were from Owen Sound. 69% of the attendees work in Owen Sound, and 37.5% were new to the area. So it was great to see that we not only did we get 140 youth into the Hartwood Hall, get them together, get them talking, get them to create some relationships, but it was nice to see almost 40% of them actually aren't the original ones from Owen Sound, and that's exactly the group that we really wanted to target of helping them plant some roots here, make some connections, and hopefully, they start building their family and building their careers here and don't leave. So more will be coming up here in June with another event, and we'll continue on and keep plugging away and see what we can do.
Good, thank you. So next on the list is number 18. You've got.
Moved by myself, Councillor Gregg, that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
All in favor? That's carried. We're back into formal session. Motion to adopt.
Moved by myself, Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business be confirmed by this council.
And all in favor? That is carried. Number 20, notices of motion. Anyone have any notices to provide? Seeing none. Number 21, bylaws. Go ahead.
Through your worship, the bylaws listed for approval include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw to update the property cleanup fee, a bylaw to amend the property standard bylaw to remove certain forms, a bylaw to amend the sign bylaw to amend the scope and definition sections, a bylaw to amend the delegation of powers and duties bylaw to delegate authority respecting election advertising to bylaw enforcement, a bylaw to amend the use of city resources during elections policy to add third-party advertisers, a bylaw to enact a yard maintenance bylaw, a bylaw to execute an agreement with RF King Holdings for the Harrison Park Road reconstruction, and a bylaw to execute an agreement with DJ Pete Roofing and Sheet Metal for the 2018 roof projects.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, would you like me to just remove bylaw 49? You had declared, Councillor Dodd, a conflict earlier? Okay. No, okay. So moved by myself, Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that bylaw numbers 2018 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 2018 50 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? And that is carried. So that completes our business for today. I've got 4:11 on the computer, so we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Go attack, go.